another episode of Fishing Idaho on a Harley. I'm your host and extremely mediocre fisherman, Skelly. Today's journey is going to be somewhat familiar to me. I'm going to try and take you on a quest to find the Idaho Largemouth Bass. Now, most of the ponds in the Treasure Valley, and Treasure Valley is Boise, Nampa, Meridian, Caldwell, Kuna. There's quite a few little towns spread out through the valley. But most of them at some point in time, or still, are being stocked with largemouth bass. Growing up as a boy on the Texas Gulf Coast, it was pretty much, if we were going to do any kind of freshwater fishing, it was going to be largemouth bass. If it was, from the tributaries of Lake Conroe to Lake Fork and its muddy roads, we were always fishing for largemouth bass. So with that being said, we should be able to catch bass hand over fist today, right? Well, we'll see. My luck hasn't been very good lately. So in order to figure out what bodies of water that I could fish or could not fish around town, I went out to the idaho.gov website. Not only does that site, it's a pretty good site, not only does that site show you all of the fishable bodies of water in the entire state, it gives you that in a listing. It will tell you what type of fish are in that particular body of water, how often it's been stocked, if there are any special restrictions that go along with it, and even the directions on how to get there. Today, I chose to stay in town. We're going to start at Loggers Pond. Loggers Pond is a small little pond on the right-hand side of Parkcenter as you're traveling out of town and you go over the new Parkcenter Bridge. If you look over to the right, there's a little turn there, and there's a pond there, and that's Loggers Pond. There aren't any special restrictions at this pond, and you'll be able to find bass, bluegill, perch, and trout. From there, we're going to pack up and head back into town along Parkcenter, and we'll stop at the Parkcenter Pond. Now, this pond has a special restriction of only 2 trout a day. All other restrictions are the same. Parkcenter Pond is quite larger than Loggers Pond, and it contains the same species of fish with the addition of catfish and sturgeon. Finally, we will end up at Esther Simplot Pond II, which is tucked in behind Veterans Memorial Park right along the green belt. It's only a short little 5-minute walk from the parking lot, and you'll find the same types of fish at Esther Simplot Pond as you will at Parkcenter Pond, minus the sturgeon. I do need to swing by Cabela's on the way and grab a couple of bass lures, as I don't have any. This is my first time fishing for largemouth bass in Idaho. So I've got to get a crankbait at least, I got to get a topwater plug, I got to get some artificial worm hooks, and I may grab a spinner bait or 2 just because they're so much fun to throw. So without any further ado, let's go fishing.
Once I arrived at Loggers Pond, I immediately tied on a Bass Pro Shops XPS crankbait that I picked up at Cabela's and went to work. I keep casting out, trying to skirt the edge of the plants to the right of the screen there. All of my bass training tells me to fish around cover. Bass love to sit in, under, or around objects. I would hate to lose my lure on the first few casts due to the snag, so I do my best to not cast into the plants. Work your crankbait in a way that makes your lure appear in distress. Work your rod tip from side to side in a jerky motion while reeling in at a moderate pace. Also, I always change my cast location after each cast, probably more out of personal preference. With the amount of plant life in this pond, I decided to switch over to plastic worm. I used the Berkeley Powerbait Pumpkin Chartreuse on a Gamakatsu size 2 offset worm hook, all held down by a Water Gremlin's 1/4 size slip sinker. Whenever I fish plastic worms, I like to work them up and down, bouncing them off the floor of the pond. Give your rod end a quick pop up towards the sky, and as you feel the sinker falling back towards the bottom, reel in a few cranks. I'll also alternate in an inconsistent reel of a quick 3 or 4 turns just to break up the pattern.
Well, I'm not really seeing anything jumping, coming up to the top or anything. And it's a pretty plant-infested pond, as you can see, all around the border of the pond the entire way. I've heard there's good fish in here, but I'm just not seeing anything doing anything. So, we're going to move on to the next pond. Let's go.
This was a pretty quiet Saturday morning for Parkcenter Pond. There are usually quite a few people fishing here, especially on the weekends. I set up the cameras and got to fishing. Again, the entire bank around the pond is covered in plant life, so I keep casting to try and lure some fish out. I've now switched to a Berkeley power bait poly shad and fish it much like the crankbait. I'm not really seeing any activity on the surface of the pond here either. I may just be a little late in the morning. Well, after a while, I switch over to a rubber crawdad and I try fishing it for a bit. I just can't seem to get anything going. So, let's pack up and head off to the next pond. It's always nice to have a pond all to yourself, especially if you're catching fish. Unfortunately for me, the only thing I caught all day was a sunburn. I kept throwing the Berkeley Powerbait Poly Shad for a bit, and then switched over to a Strike King spinnerbait. I just love throwing spinnerbaits. Well, there we have it. Another beautiful day in Idaho, spent the way we were all intended to spend it, out in nature. Enjoy your life, be kind to one another, and keep on fishing any way you can. I'll see you in the next episode.